I'd like to welcome everybody to this afternoon's Armchair Travel. Wonderful to see so many on the most beautiful day we've had since last summer, I think. This is Cathy Leonard. I'm Jane Epstein, and we traveled together with our husbands Arnie and Tom to Norway in January and February of this year. So we're going to share this presentation. Cathy, and I have to say, Cathy is the tech person. She did this entire slide presentation. I would not have known how to do one slide. So I'm very grateful to Cathy for all her skill, and Tom was the other guru, tech guru, so we've had a lot of help. Go ahead. So this is a map of the route that we took on the ship. We were on a ship, we were only on the coast. We didn't go inland at all. We started in London, and we were supposed to go to Amsterdam, but as happens when you're dealing with the ocean, there was bad weather for that ship coming up from Barcelona. So we missed our first day, which would have been in Amsterdam. And we traveled up to Tromsø, Narvik, sorry, the bottom of the three, already above the Arctic Circle. And we stayed in, on the boat at Narvik, Tromsø, and Alta. And then we came down through the inside passage to Bergen, and everybody flew home from there. So those are the cities that we'll be talking about today. By the way, if you have any questions, we really welcome them, but if you could hold them until after, I think that's a more efficient way because we have a lot of material to get through. Cathy.
Yeah, we're not sure how long it will take. So after we crossed the North Sea, which was rough, Tom and I ventured out on the promenade, which goes around the outside of the boat. Okay. And this was our first view of Norway. So this is how high the sun was above the horizon at 1:30 p.m. on January 30th. And that map shows where our ship was located at that time. And then this photo was taken 15 minutes later. And what I love most about Norway was the quality of the light. Narvik is our first port, our first stop. So at 12:06 on January 31st, we crossed the Arctic Circle. And I noticed that I kept thinking of myself as being above the Arctic Circle. But when you're above the Arctic Circle, people say you're in the Arctic Circle. And that's where we crossed the Arctic Circle. And this was the previous slide, actually. That first photo sort of represents twilight at 8:45 a.m. and then an hour later, sunrise. And then a little later, this is what daylight was like as we approached Narvik.
So this was our first stop, the historical industrial port town of Narvik. It's known for its deep ice-free harbor. It was founded in 1902 to provide a crucial year-round terminal for Swedish iron ore, which came across Sweden, across Norway, and was taken by the Germans in World War II for their war machine. In addition, it's known for its dramatic mountain scenery and world-class skiing. You can see in all these cities the beautiful, beautiful mountains in the background. This is just the downtown area. And there's so much interesting history of World War II. Here, where we didn't experience World War II, obviously, on the ground, it's much more real history for the European countries who experienced it. This was a memorial to a group of many, many thousand young Yugoslav boys, they're all under 20, these boys who were there as part of the kind of war prisoners, and they were all eventually murdered, and this is a memorial to them. We also visited a cemetery which had a lot of soldiers from all over. This was a British soldier, his last name was Taylor. We were invited to put roses on the graves of the Allied soldiers who died there, and this is the cemetery on the right. You can see it was already dark, and it wasn't late. It wasn't like night. But one thing I remember when we were going, people would say, "You're going to Norway in January." where it's really, really cold and it's never light. It's dark all the time. Why? Well, one thing we found out was that the Gulf Stream actually goes up. Are you going to show that slide?
I will.
Okay, Cathy's going to show a slide that will make it more clear. But it makes the coast of Norway very warm. And while we were there in late January, early February, we had warmer weather and less snow than there was in Stow every day. So it's something that people don't know. It's never actually completely dark. Anyway, Cathy's going to show more about that later. The other thing is these mountains provide wonderful skiing, and Norway is going to host the prestigious Alpine World Ski Championships in 2029. Because of the lack of long days, they illuminate the ski slopes at night so that people can practice. They're extremely excited about this, even though it's 3 years away, and they're already planning how they're going to accommodate all these thousands of people. It's not a very big town. So skiing is a huge thing in Norway, of course.
So Tom and I really enjoyed our snowshoeing experience. It was above Narvik, and you can see, well, it's at 3:40 in the afternoon. The city is already lit, and the sky's light, but I think the sun has gone down at that point. And this was our snowshoe group heading up the hill. The trees here are, mountain birch, and they grow all the way up to the tree line. They're valued for their firewood, and the fire smell really sweet. I just wanted to take some of that wood home with me. This is one more photo from the snowshoe, where we were actually going through some unbroken snow with our guide. The guide has the light, but actually when you're snowshoeing, you don't really need a light because there's so much light from the city, and it was moonlit. It was a full moon. The brightly lit bridge is this bridge here. It was finished in 2018, so that Narvik would be connected to that city up there. And before that time, there's a very faint road here that crosses the fjord there. Someone would have had to drive all the way around, so that was a big improvement.
Should I talk about the cars and the flying between the cities?
Sure.
Okay, so one thing is that now in Norway you're only allowed to have electric cars. You cannot have hybrid cars or cars that use gas. So they're trying to be as responsible as possible about climate change. And people said, well, wait a minute, what if you have like a long, you're driving to see your uncle or wherever in a town quite a ways away. You can't, it's so impractical to drive an electric car for a distance. And what they said was, the cities are mostly along the coast, and because of these mountains, it's extremely impractical to drive. People used to mostly use boats, and now they mostly fly. Obviously, like Oslo is inland, but all of these cities and towns along the major cities that we visited, you would fly. You wouldn't attempt to drive. It just wouldn't make sense because there are roads, but they're very impractical to use for your average life. So they're going to do fine with all of their electric cars.
Yeah, and the routes, the air routes between cities had recently been completed. The bigger cities.
So this is a lovely little wooden octagonal church. It's octagonal for the 8 Beatitudes in the Bible, the blessings spoken by Jesus. And we were serenaded by this lovely group of women who sang a cappella to us. Norway is a very secular society, and the church attendance is very low, but churches are still highly valued as places for community events and gatherings and celebrating religious holidays, especially Christmas and Easter, which are huge holidays in Norway, and celebrating religious traditions like weddings and baptisms. We did go by one church where there was a baptism. There were the families coming out with the baby. So you'll see more churches as we go.
Yes, there are a lot of churches. So next port, Tromsø. I really like this particular photo because since Norway is so sparsely settled, we didn't really see very many small villages. So this was a village that we passed when we were getting close to Tromsø. And Tromsø has this bridge, it's the Tromsø Bridge, which is iconic, and the church, the Arctic Cathedral there with the arrow pointing to it, that's also iconic for that city. And so the Arctic Church was inspired by, the architect was inspired by the forms that ice takes, and it was finished in 1965. It consists of 11 concrete panels on each side that were poured in place, and on the outside, the panels are coated with aluminum.
So there's no slide of the windows?
It's coming up.
Okay. Yeah, so this is this church and the Arctic Cathedral, which are like on all the postcards of Tromsø. Those are the big places that people take pictures of to remember. And you want me to talk about the?
Yeah, the slides are not centered.
That's all right. It's fine. Doesn't matter. Okay.
We'd have to have somebody tall enough to move that.
Okay,
It doesn't-
sorry.
Doesn't matter.
Yes, go ahead.
No, are you going to show the
Yes.
slide of the? Yeah. So what happened was, it's very striking, as you can see in the slide on the right and the slide on the left. These are from outside, and what happened was, the front was all plain glass, and what happened was when people went into church in the morning, like on a Sunday morning, they would be blinded because it was eastern facing and the sun would come in, and no one had thought of that, and the architect didn't think of it. So what they did was they put this stained glass in place, which is actually only visible, the color is only visible from the outside. It's very odd. You have to walk around to see this beautiful stained glass, but at least the people aren't blinded when they go into church in the morning. When the architect saw what they had done, he was horrified and thought they had ruined his vision, and he refused to ever go back. So he never really saw it afterwards.
So that was a story that we were told in person, but I couldn't find it anywhere online.
And the inside is extremely plain. It's just not very interesting. This is just some shots of the interior.
Yeah.
A lot of the streets in these northern towns are very walkable. A lot of them are pedestrian only. And it contains the highest number of old wooden houses in northern Norway. They're beautiful. The architecture is uniformly beautiful, I think, in Norway. And when it says the highest number of old wooden houses, there's also the northernmost McDonald's and the northernmost Burger King, and which we didn't take any pictures of. This is just the harbor with the beautiful mountains behind.
Yeah, this is a beautiful picture of harbor.
So on the left, it kind of reminds me of the statue in Gloucester of the fisherman. So this is honoring the tradition of fishing all along the coast of Norway. It's always been about fishing. And he's standing in a small boat battling the sea. It's much smaller than the one in Gloucester. And the town of Tromsø has a midnight sun marathon every June, when it's probably happening almost as we speak. Right. On the longest day of the year, they have a marathon, and this was two women running in the midnight sun marathon in June with snow in their hair, in this case. You took that picture.
This is the Tromsø Library and City Archives, finished in 2005.
And on the left is the Tromsø Cathedral, built in 1861, thank you. And it holds 1,000 people. It's bigger inside than it looks. It's the only Protestant cathedral made of wood in Norway. And the Cathedral of Our Lady, Catholic Church on the right, built in 1861, only holds 150 people, and that may tell you the relative population of Catholics and Protestants in Norway. But they're beautiful. The wooden churches are all beautiful architecturally, I think.
And this is where you get an example of northernmost.
Yes, the northernmost Catholic cathedral and the northernmost. Oh, so we saw this long line, going way down, this pedestrian. Like, why are they standing in line? They're standing in line for reindeer hot dogs, the best in the world, and probably the northernmost reindeer hot dogs in the world. So I'm sure they're delicious, but we didn't feel like standing in that long line. But they're obviously very popular with the locals.
So Tom and I figured that when we went husky sledding, we would be outside but not moving, and that's when we would need the most warm clothes. So we took everything out that we had brought, like new long underwear and neck warmers. But as Jane said, actually, when we left New England, that historic record-breaking snowstorm had moved in and the record cold temperatures. And so when we were in Norway, it was always warmer there than it was here. We really didn't need everything. This is Camp Hammock on the bottom is the Husky camp that we went to. That map shows the route. It mostly went along the fjord, but it also went through some mountain valleys, and they were just so beautiful. So that's one photo. And here's another photo of when we're going through the valley. The camp is, it's actually for profit, but they pay attention to responsible tourism, so animal welfare, sustainability, and they attempt to hire locally. The little boxes are the dogs' houses. And that was our guide. I thought she was particularly good at describing the individual husky dogs, what their personalities were, what their quirks were, whether they, loved to pull and run. Hello? Yes. Or whether they didn't like to pull and run. So if they loved to pull and run, then they got to run for a couple years after retirement age, which was ages 10 and 11. Or if they didn't really like to pull and run, then they were adopted. And these signs were in one of the small buildings, and I think they just capture how much they think of their dogs as individuals. These are Alaskan Huskies, and they're bred for health, not appearance, so they all sorry, all look different. This is, we're all onto the sled. There's a team of 7 dogs who pull every sled, and you can see there are 3 pairs, and then a single dog in the second position. This was really the peak moment of the trip, being pulled by huskies on a sled with the beautiful, beautiful sky. And after the dogs pulled us and our musher for 5 kilometers, they get to rest. Alta. Oh. So Alta is a place where we got to visit the Sami people, the indigenous.
Can you trade mics? I think yours might be.
Sure. Ooh, sorry. Where we got to visit the Sami people, the indigenous people of Norway. And they, the green area in the map shows their original homelands. And so northern Norway, northern Sweden, Finland, and Russia. And in Russia, the part that's Russia is the Kola Peninsula. So today, they're connected by culture, but they're separated by the languages they speak. In other words, Sami is sort of a second language now. And they've lived in Norway for 2,000 to 2,500 years. So here's a map. Alta is the very top of the map, and Mossy is At the bottom, it's a Sami village of 200 people located on the Finnmark Plateau, and the drive was about an hour. Each family there herds as many as 300 to 600 reindeer, and they sell the meat locally and internationally, and it makes up more than half their income. So at one point, someone asked our guide how many reindeer his family owned, and he said that was like asking how much money he had in the bank. So, originally everything was, transportation was completely by traditional reindeer-drawn wooden sleds. Now there's snowmobiles and more.
So these reindeer are semi-domesticated. They can live independent and they survive in the wild. They follow the pack, which is very convenient because once the Sami people have a few reindeer going, the others will all follow. But they're really wild. You don't like pat them the way you would a horse or a dog or whatever. They're just working animals. One thing about this is their traditional clothing on the left. They only wear this for occasions, holidays, birthdays, Christmas, whatever, and also when the tourists come like we do, so that we can see the traditional clothing. One interesting thing about the Sami people is that, most continents and countries have indigenous people. We have Native Americans, and most indigenous people are second-class citizens, I guess is the best way to put it, not generally respected or considered full members of the society, not the top people. And the same was true in Norway. The Sami were kind of second-class citizens. No one paid too much attention to them up there in the north. What happened was the government decided to install a huge dam in the north, in the Sami area, which would have flooded a whole big area where they live and have their reindeer and have their work. And someone from the south happened to notice that this was happening and kind of raised the alarm and educated people throughout Norway that this was happening and that this was wrong. And everybody did get very, very involved in this cause, so much so that not only did they move the dam to another area, which would not, was just as effective, but would not flood the Sami lands, but people realized these people don't have a voice. They're really, really second-class citizens, and we need to do something about that. This is a very egalitarian country, which Cathy will speak more about later. And so they created a sort of a legislature for the Sami people in the north where they live, around Alta. And it doesn't have power. It's not like a separate legislature that can create laws for the country. But they do discuss the ongoing issues of the country, and they can express their opinion and what might work better for them than what's being proposed. So they definitely have much more of a voice now than they used to before this dam was proposed. And nowadays, just like Native Americans, Sami people are doctors, lawyers, teachers, surgeons, whatever. So some people, as Cathy mentioned, this is a small town of only 200 people live there. So some people do keep the traditional reindeer herding business, but a lot of people live in the cities and have regular jobs.
So, yes, clearly they get money from tourism as well as their reindeer. So, did you want to keep talking? No? Okay.
Beautiful picture.
Yeah, sorry. Beautiful picture. Hooking up the reindeer to a sled. And
Arnie and me and Cathy and Tom's reindeer is trying to pass us on the right.
it was so annoying. This thing about reindeers following each other, and our reindeer is just beside you the whole time.
So cute.
So, yeah, this is a large traditional tent called a labu. And here's some gorgeous pictures of the inside. And this is just a sort of a different view. The members, a father and a grandfather, and he's telling us about their life. And the only thing maybe new in this slide is that the benches and the floor are covered with soft reindeer hides. But in Masi, now everyone lives in regular houses.
So this is a sort of a version of the tent, which is made more modern. You can see it has upright sides. And this was a Sami mom with her pretty little kid, and the other woman wearing a traditional dress. And they made for us delicious reindeer stew and homemade bread and a delicious sweet. Reindeer stew for them is mostly at special family occasions or religious holidays, again like Christmas and Easter. But they were very hospitable, and we had a really pleasant visit with them.
Okay.
That's you.
So I was especially interested in the fact that they are semi-nomadic, so I have this long slide here. They move the reindeer between summer and winter grazing grounds, and the migration takes about a week in the fall and a week in the spring. When they are moving between grounds like that, they have to encircle the herd 5 or 6 times a day to make sure it's all together. So that would be with either a snowmobile or with an ATV. Then in the winter, when they're on the Finnmark Plateau, they still have to encircle the herd about once a day, checking for like any stray tracks to make sure it's together. They're moved in late May and April to a coastal area for their summer grazing. And in the summer, they're gathered into a corral so that they can mark the ears of the new reindeer. And the ears are marked with like notches and cuts. And the pattern they use is a legal, it's illegal, like a trademark. They're called earmarks, and they identify the owner of the herd. And in the fall, the government doesn't allow them to move the herd back from the coast to the winter grounds until November 1st to make sure there's enough snow cover that will cover up the lichen and the mushrooms that the reindeer depend on in the winter. So I think that's all.
Oh, yeah. So this was a small private museum called the Tirpitz Museum, all about the big Nazi fighting ship, warship called the Tirpitz. There's a model of it. It was very hard to get a picture because of all the reflection on the glass. But there's many of the paraphernalia and so forth that the Nazis had in this area, and various things from the ship, from the boat. The other, what was the other one, Cathy? The twin of this one.
Oh, the Bismarck.
Yeah, so it was destroyed. So the Nazi government wanted to be very sure that the Tirpitz wouldn't be destroyed. It was a very, very enormous, expensive undertaking to build this warship. So they brought it up to the coast of Norway, and they put it in the Alta Fjord, which just means the fjord that's by the city of Alta. And it stayed there through the whole war. They didn't really want it to engage in any battles because it would be so bad for their morale if it was destroyed like the Bismarck had been. So it was interesting to see all that and to realize how alive the history of World War II is for the local people.
Yeah.
So this was on the left, the exact place where the Tirpitz was stationed through beginning in March 1943 through the end of the war, and this is just looking in the other direction.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Yeah.
The whole place
Hard
is-
to imagine a battleship there.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's true. It's very, very quiet and very beautiful now. So this is a church, another wooden church. These churches throughout Norway are old. This is 1836, an English-inspired Gothic church. And the Nazis did employ a scorched earth policy when they left a region. And they killed, like 300 people died locally when they left, is just murdered. But they largely spared the churches, especially the ones surrounded by graveyards. So that's, horrible about the people, obviously. Lucky for us that we have some of this beautiful architecture. And the local people were copper miners, was their employment. And so this is a statue commemorating the people who worked in the local copper mines and their families, and they would have attended this church. The candles show how it was illuminated. It's amazing to me that more of these wooden churches didn't burn down
Yeah.
over the years.
So the next two slides cover our cross-country ski experience that Tom and I did. These two slides just show the scenery on the way to the trail where we skied, and the slide on the left there. So the snow, Norway had less snowfall this past year, and the snow wasn't fresh, so the trails were slick. And so what that meant was there was more falling down than usual, and we were just as happy to sit down at the end and have our refreshments.
Cathy. So about the skiing, cross-country skiing is the national sport of Norway, and you probably noticed in the Winter Olympics how they win all the competitions, and in fact, if they don't win, this is not good. When they go home, it's not good if you did not win the cross-country skiing. Also, next to every major road, any road you go in around these cities or towns, is a large, probably as big as this, groomed cross-country skiing path that goes along next to the road, and people typically cross-country ski to work. So it's not just, well, after, maybe after work we'll have an hour, or after school, it's transportation for commuting. The other interesting thing is that our guide said that children in Norway are never sent home permission slips from school when they go on an adventure, say, we're going skiing, or we're going climbing, we're going hiking. That's just what you do in Norway as a school child. This is part of what you do. So why would you get permission from a parent for something that all children do growing up and they just do it? It's not something that you can opt out of or be cross-examined about. This is a very pretty little church in, where are we, Alta? Yeah. So again, this would be used mostly for baptism and so forth, and there was actually a funeral going on at the time that we were at that church, so we weren't able to see the inside. And you can see a bit of the graveyard around. On the right, the Northern Lights Cathedral, which is just absolutely breathtakingly beautiful, much, much more impressive than the sort of not very impressive one in Tromsø. Yeah. So it was built to replace the old Alta church with a larger space, and the exterior was clad in sheets of titanium, which especially lit up at night are especially beautiful. So this is not a picture that I took, unfortunately, of the Northern Lights, but I took a picture of a picture. And you can see, though, with this sort of swirling, how that inspired the shape of the cathedral. It's very attractive. And these churches are often used more for community events. Just like a church here, there might be a church hall where community events occur. But the interior, which you see here, is just a big, big open space. And they have these events that you can see there's chairs rather than pews, and they just move those and have whatever the event is taking place just in what we call the sanctuary, I guess. The interior is also inspired by the dancing Northern Lights. On the right are the bronze designs, one representing each of the disciples of Jesus. Interesting thing about the sort of crucifix without a cross thing in the front is that Jesus is looking up like this towards God as his last breath leaves, symbolizing light, hope, and triumph. I've never seen a statue of Jesus meant to represent him on the cross where he's looking up and not down. But it's just great. It's a beautiful space. More pictures. The organ, the nighttime view, it's all illuminated very beautifully.
Jane took all these pictures.
Oh, and then, so the Alta, there's a special museum for these rock carvings, which come from 7,000 to 2,000 years ago, and it became a World Heritage Site in 1985. These rock paintings are kind of unique to this area. This one was found by a man plowing his field, not this one, in 1950, and he didn't think it was anything special, so he just put it by his door where it stayed for about 20 years. And inside the museum, this one is inside the museum, and it's called the Pippi Longstocking rock because it looked like she has braids in a skirt like Pippi Longstocking. So the museum is very small on the inside with just a few actual rock carvings and then a few kind of pretend ones for illustrative purposes. They're mostly outside, which makes sense because they are in the places where they were found. So in the nice weather, there's a path you can walk down and see all these carvings, which are, I'm sure, very impressive. But it was dark and snowy when we were there, so unfortunately we weren't able to see any of those. So they were discovered in the 1970s, as we said, and they were, at that time, they were painted this red to make the designs more visible, because they're, on the left, it's very visible, but if they're not carved that deeply, they weren't as visible. And then they decided that probably wasn't such a good idea because it's not how they actually were, and they can damage the carvings and kind of mislead the viewer about what they really are. So gradually now they're removing the red paint. And it seems that all these thousands of years ago, this would have been, they gathered from these rocks, these paintings and carvings, a meeting place for all of the indigenous people far above the Arctic Circle.
Yeah. Okay. So now we've gone south to Bergen, and one of the things we did was we rode this funicular railway. It's two cars on a single cable. It's that they're in balance with each other, and it's energy efficient. There is a motor, but it's energy efficient. And the way it works is when one car's up at the top, the other car is at the bottom. So each car unloads and loads, and then they trade places. It's a single cable, and they trade places like that. So there's one track, and so in the middle there's a loop so that they can pass each other, which is, well, this isn't it yet. This is just a tunnel we were approaching. You can see the beginning of the loop happens to be in the tunnel. Then you can see the bottom train ascending and passing. And then this is just a view on the way down of the city and the harbor. The other thing we saw that was special in the Bergen area was a Stow church. It's a medieval wooden Christian church building. They were only built between 1100 and 1350. And while they were once common in northwestern Europe, today most of the surviving churches are in Norway. So this particular church we saw was the Fantoft Stow Church. It was built in 1150 and moved near Bergen in 1883. Fortunately, it was destroyed by arson in 1992. And what they did was they reconstructed the church using traditional materials and methods, and that took 6 years. So it opened about 1998, and of course now it's protected by a security fence. This is the inside of the church, so all wood is still new, I think. 1998, yeah, it's just beautiful. This particular slide shows a little bit more of the construction. You can see, first of all, that there's a roof that covers a large open space, and it's held up by these ore pine posts. So in the background there, you can see the ore pine posts are separated and they're supporting the roof. And ore pine is an old growth mountain pine that in medieval times, they took the top off, they took the branches off, they let it stand for 20 years. It became resin-filled and very resistant to rot. And then they would use them to build their churches, and as long as they were on stone, they didn't rot. So that technique of ore pine only ever took place in the Middle Ages. However, I was wondering how they got these ore pine supports in 6 years, but anyway. Okay, this cross is, it's an early medieval stone cross, dates to the same time period, 1000 to 1200, only found in Western Norway. It provides evidence that of the Celtic and Christian influences that were brought to Norway from the British Isles by the Vikings. And really fascinating to me is it probably marked a place before there were churches and graveyards for religious gatherings.
So this is Bergen House Fortress. It's very old, 1270s. This is the sort of residence and dining and royal residence on the left, banquet hall, and on the right, a tower, which enlarged the royal residence. It was enlarged in 1500s to its present size and form. This was the guide from the group that I was in. Cathy and Tom were on another group. And his name was David, or Davide. He was from Rome. And in Bergen, it rains 2 days out of every 3. So this gray, overcast sky is very typical of Bergen. And it was like that when we were there. So I said to him, so you're from Rome. And it's, you know, the eternal city. And it's beautiful. And it's warm a lot of the time. And it's sunny. And here you are in Bergen, where it rains 2 days out of every 3. But there's a lot of young people in their 20s and 30s from all over Europe and all over the world who live in Norway and act as guides. They're very visible in the tourist industry. And so, and for instance, our musher, when we did the dog sledding, was from Spain. And he got very involved with these dogs. He selected a group of dogs from the group of 110 dogs, and he was specially training them for a race that weekend, sort of a mini Iditarod, and he was all about these dogs. He loved, really lit up when he talked about the dogs. One of our tours, I forget now which one, there's a woman, beautiful young woman from Morocco with long, black, wavy hair. This was a big surprise. I did not expect all these young people from not only Europe, but Northern Africa to be working there in the tourist industry. St. Mary's Church, the oldest existing building in Bergen. I think it's still very beautiful. Started in 1130. This was the church from which we saw people coming out having had a baptism. And the wharf, if someone sends you a postcard from Bergen, it's going to be of this. It's the Bergen is the name of the area, and these are old houses and businesses right along the pier, the harbor. And some of them have burned down over the years, wooden, and so they've been rebuilt, but exactly as they were originally. So some are still old and some are very new. The Hanseatic League in medieval times was it was a very important trading league in Europe, throughout Europe. I think it was based in Germany, actually. And from Norway, it was all about the fish, which they, of course, dried, because in the long time it would take that boat to get to Germany, the fish would no longer be edible. So this dried cod and other fish were the big export in the Hanseatic League. And they don't have, you'll see on the left, this is the same area, just from the back instead of the front. They don't have chimneys because they can't have fire because they're afraid of fire. It's been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1979. These are just some pictures from that area. The oldest boys' school in Scandinavia is on the left. It started out as boys in 1748. I think it's co-ed now, of course, but it's still a school. They're just so tasteful, all their old buildings. More pictures of the beautiful buildings in downtown Bergen. So these are the traditional styles for men on the left, women on the right. And the embroidery and designs and lace is unique to each area of Norway. So if you are from there and you're knowledgeable about these things, you could say, oh, she's from wherever, and she's from wherever, because it's unique to that area. Again, they're mostly used on May 17th, which is Coronation Day, kind of their 4th of July. It's that big of a celebration. Weddings and confirmations and funerals and baptisms. We did, coming out of that St. Mary's Church, we did see many women wearing these really, really beautiful traditional dresses, but they can cost as much as $2,000, which might be another reason why they're not worn more often.
So let's see. So we've covered some of this. So the housing is as expensive as it is here. It's limited, and that's because, of course, there isn't a lot of buildable land between the mountains and the fjords or the sea. And sometimes if there's islands, the cities spill over onto the islands, and then people commute by ferry. The right to roam, do we have time to talk about the right to roam? The right to roam is this act that they passed in 1957 that gives every Norwegian the right to access, hike, ski, swim, and bike on most uncultivated land, regardless of ownership. So that would exclude any farms. And camping is even allowed for up to 2 nights in one spot, as long as the site is, 150 plus meters away from the residence. So that was really interesting. Another thing is, one of our guides says, we have curtains, we know how to use them, but we don't. And they have a culture of openness to, nature, light, and the outside. And also they love window candles. So we talked about cars and skiing. Yeah, so the energy they can supply, they have a lot of hydroelectric energy because they have rivers, and then they do dam some of them and have high altitude reservoirs. So they provide 95% of their energy with hydroelectric. And I think that's egalitarian. So one guide said, we're a very egalitarian country, and so, that means they have these deeply held values of equality, social responsibility, and trust. And if you measure Norway against other countries, they have high levels of gender and income equality, and more other things too. Okay. Well, I'll try to keep this brief. So what they call a polar night is a time when the sun never rises up above the horizon, even though they can have a beautiful twilight in the middle of the day. And they embrace this time with events and gatherings and warm meals and blankets and candles, so they really embrace it. And they have a word for that. It's kushli, and it means coziness. And then Soldagen is celebrated, it's celebrated probably many places, but this is specific to Tromsø. It's the first day the sun rises on the city center. So the period of darkness for the town is from November 27th through January 14th, so like 7 weeks. And then it's a little longer for the city center because it takes, probably it's hidden by buildings or whatever, so that's even longer. That's 9 weeks. That's 1 week on either side longer of darkness. So, but no matter what, January 21st is always the day the sun hits the city center. That's when they celebrate Soldagen. Whether it's sunny or cloudy, they celebrate that day. This just a little graph of, this again is Tromsø. So there was 5 hours of daylight, and then on either side was an hour and a half of twilight. So there were a total of 8 hours of light. But if you combine, you have the twilight, you have the sunset, you have the sunrise, you have the low light of early morning and late afternoon, and then you have that light reflected off the snow and the sea and the mountains, you get your beautiful light, yeah. Well, I had this, I had this thought, well, I must be able to go, above the Arctic Circle, somewhere else besides Norway, maybe somewhere closer to home. And I found this map, and you can see that Norway is the only place inside the Arctic Circle that's warmed. So this North Atlantic current is an extension of the Gulf Stream, and it goes right up Norway, and it makes Norway habitable. So I'm sure you can go above the Arctic Circle anywhere, but this is obviously the ideal place.
The inner inland cities like Oslo, the capital, which is way inland, this wouldn't apply to. It was probably as cold and snowy in Oslo as it was in Stow. So it only applies to the cities right along the coast, which is the only place where we were.
Okay, so, well, we really wanted to see Northern Lights, but we didn't. And if we were told, oh, you can go look now, we would only see a green, shapeless haze. But you could try looking through your camera to see if you could see them through your camera. And so I got this picture. I never saw this with my eyes, but my camera did. So this is when we are sailing through the Norwegian Inner Passage from south to Bergen, and it's the beginning of a beautiful sunset. Yeah. Well, there's 6 altogether. Well, well done. Okay, thank you. So, in the photo where we're having refreshments after cross-country skiing, we're eating this Norwegian spice cake, which I made some. So there's some Norwegian spice cake over there. Huh? Oh, sorry. What? Questions. Sorry.